BBC News, the latest headlines for you. Round 2 of the debate of the Democratic presidential hopefuls has taken place in Miami. The frontrunner, Joe Biden, came under attack. Much of Western Europe continues to bake under high temperatures, with huge wildfires raging in Spain. And the G20 has begun in Japan, with the trade dispute between America and China expected to dominate the talks. Now, it's time to take a look at some of the stories that are in the media today, and we begin with the front page of The Eye, and like many of today's papers, it's all about the ongoing Tory leadership contest. It has this warning from the Scottish Tory leader Ruth Davidson, who says that Boris Johnson's Brexit plan could break up the union. Staying with Brexit, The Times is reporting that the French owner of Vauxhall has given the car industry a boost by saying it will build the new Astra in Britain, but only if there's a favourable Brexit deal. The Financial Times has an extraordinary exclusive interview with Vladimir Putin, speaking on the eve, of course, of the G20 summit in Osaka. He's claiming that liberalism has become obsolete. The business section of The Times is reporting on the announcement from Sir Johnny Ive, the iPhone designer who gave Apple its look. He's leaving the tech giant to start his own company. And The Independent is reporting that UK gambling firms have paid a record £19.6 million in penalties last year for failing to protect problem gamblers and stop money laundering. But the paper is asking, is it enough? And finally, the back page of the Metro's got the headline, Great Scott, in reference, of course, to Jill Scott's goal that helped propel the Lionesses through to the semi-finals of the Women's World Cup. Let's bring in Cornelia, shall we? CEO of the MRL Corporation. It's a business consultancy. Let's start. We'll go back to the sport, but let's start, shall we, with the Tory leadership contest. The Times, a different paper, is sort of quite revealing. It's saying that Boris Johnson is planning this emergency budget after claiming just a day ago that the chances of a no-deal Brexit, so Britain leaving the EU the end of October without a deal, to be 1,000,000 to 1. Ruth Davidson here saying, you know, plans such as those could actually break up the European the UK.
And you know that therein lies the problem when you looked at the small selectorate. It's not an electorate of the Tory membership who will select the next Tory leader who will become the Prime Minister. They did a poll, YouGov did a poll with them a few weeks back, and more than 2/3 said Brexit was more important to them than keeping the union together. That was scary. And then you see what it's irresponsible because, you know, both contestants say we'll go back and we try to negotiate with the EU. The EU has been quite clear that there's no negotiation about the withdrawal agreement, and the EU is fed up with Brexit, and we also have to know that at the end of October, Juncker leaves. At the end of November, Tusk leaves. There will be a new management. They will not want to be bogged down with Brexit. So we may still see a no-deal Brexit. I wonder whether Philip Hammond really created this war chest to have it squandered on all the tax breaks that Boris is promising.
Interesting, The Eye running this line here. Vauxhall warning that it won't make new Astras in the UK if the next PM backs no deal. Flip side, of course, of that story is The Times. No, sorry, not The Times. Is it? Yes, it is The Times, yes. Saying that Astra is pledging to make the cars if there's a favourable deal. I mean, this just goes to show, doesn't it, the nature of news and how it always depends on the prism in which you're looking at.
Yeah, but it's not necessarily. It's the same thing. Astra, Group BSA, Peugeot, Citroën, who are the owners of Vauxhall, said we will, but we need to have a deal. There needs to be a deal. They're basically saying the same thing. They're just giving us a little bit of a spin. Yeah. But they're saying the same thing. And this is very important because if you look at it, Nissan stopped producing its SUV EV in Sunderland, and Honda outright is closing the Swindon plant. And these are not easy times for car makers. You know, they need to reorganize themselves away from combustion engine to electric vehicles, so on.
This is it. Not only are they caught in the crosshairs of political divides, there are also wider structural issues going
absolutely.
on here as well.
If you look at it, BMW between 2023 and 2025 will have more than 50% of its cars manufactured will be electric vehicles. So there's a lot going on in that sector.
Now, we have to get to the Financial Times.
Oh, yes.
This story here, done by the editor of the FT, Lionel Barber, with Russia's president, Russia's president saying liberalism effectively is dead. Long live what, according to Vladimir Putin?
Well, you know, he says liberalism is dead, and he criticizes Western democracies for their mindless multiculturalism. So he is an autocrat, and he sort of he says look, the Brexit, Orban, all of these things, Trump, all of this shows that liberalism is dead. You know, as one of these bleeding heart liberals, I hope he's not right.
Well, I mean, he was also lamenting the lack of rules for the new world order. I mean, where, for example, does the UK and Russia stand at the moment? I mean, they're a really fractured relationship.
Fractured relationship. He says they're getting closer together again, and that there is the fractured relationship is basically based on the Skripal affair, where Britain says the Russians poisoned this former Russian spy, and Russia says they didn't. So there you go. But you know, he says a few disconcerting things, like he says, oh, Russia gained invaluable fighting experience in Syria. Well, maybe.
At what human cost?
At what human cost? But Russia certainly played its cards very well in Syria, because they now have a naval base in Tartus, and they have an air base, so they have access again to the Mediterranean, which they had lost temporarily. So yeah, he's played his cards well, but in a more autocratic way. So this is an autocrat speaking. Don't expect him to be a liberal.
Well, I mean, it's a fascinating interview. Unfortunately, we don't have more time to go into it.
But I think it's refreshing that he is so honest.
Well, yeah, he's certainly that, isn't he? Yeah, I mein, zero tolerance, he says, for spies, but he doesn't have any problem with LGBT persons.
No, he doesn't. But I think he may not. But within his population, there is big. But the Eastern Europeans are a bit more conservative.
Let's talk about Sir Johnny Ive. I mean, after almost 30 years, he is leaving. I quit was the headline my producer Matt Heavens came up with this morning. I mean, arguably, you know, you could say that this man here, who lots of people might not necessarily be familiar with, was more important to Apple than Steve Jobs. I mean, he gave it the look, the feel.
Yeah, exactly.
He constantly innovated. He created a new product class.
Tim Cook said he was invaluable. The current CEO said he was invaluable, and he was one of the most important people. And Sir Johnny Ive says Steve Jobs was his best friend. So they had a great commercial creative relationship. He had his own company, worked for Apple. Then Apple hired him. He started to lead a design team, and he was behind the iPod, the iPhone, and the iMac series. So you know, he created the look. He was the look creator.
But lots of and then you know, subsequently imitated by lots of other brands. Some people would say that perhaps now a fresh pair of eyes is needed, because you know, sales are falling of lots of these products now.
It's absolutely, and it's also not an easy thing. But you know, last year this article says $46.6 billion were spent globally on purchasing Apple products.
Boom. Wow. So Johnny
Not
Ive,
bad.
Not bad, considering that the company he joined was almost bust when he joined it. Let's talk about what's going on here. The Independent is looking at gambling firms, saying that gambling firms paid a record almost £20 million in penalties last year for failing to protect problem gamblers and stop money laundering. I looked at this and I thought, you know what? that's the cost of doing business for them. What did you
Yes,
think?
and it's so little if you look at what they're earning so much, they're so highly profitable.
It's
but you
so
know,
shocking, isn't it? The total amount of fines levied is just 0.13%
I actually think,
of the industry
I
profits.
actually think they should have been fined more because gambling is an addiction, which is a societal problem, and especially, you know, with online gambling now, it's just so easy. There's more and more kids who have problems with gambling.
Yeah.
So this is like alcoholism. This is it's an addiction. It's like a drug. It's an addiction, and it is a problem.
This is really sad, isn't it? This week, the NHS here in the UK announcing
Gambling for children.
for children as young as 13.
Yeah, no, this is very bad, and because it's so under-regulated, and because with the internet, you know, everybody at home can. It's easy. You don't even need to go to the bet shop anymore.
Yeah, 14 NHS treatment centres are due to open for children across England this year.
It's very sad.
And finally,
Yay!
great Scott, Jill Scott, she has propelled England, I should say, into the Women's World Cup. Have you been following it?
I've been following it, and you know what? Of course, I want England to win. I mean, we must win. But the other thing is, I think it's great how women's sports, also women's rugby, women's sports have more prominence, and that is very important because we need to move more. And these people are role models. They can get the kids out. They get the kids to move away from the computer and gambling to move. So this is great. I hope they're doing well, and even if they're not winning, it's good.
Brilliant. Thanks very much, Cornelia. Role model in and of your own right. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Plenty more. Stay with us here on BBC News.